Hello, MMA community, YouTubers, my followers, and all the people that want to make some money on MMA betting tips and breakdowns and predictions, and all you fans who just like to hear about their favorite fighters and upcoming matchups. I'm glad to be bringing you guys another segment on my channel, man. I had a lot of fun breaking down some of these fights, and I'm excited to talk to you guys about it. And I love when I see, I'm not a cocky guy, I'm not conceited, I'm fighting anybody who knows me, I'm far from it, but I just love when I see these things, and when I'm making comparisons between this fighter and that fighter, especially when I notice like the odd makers didn't know, there's no chance that they could have caught on to these things. Like the stuff that I was saying about so many other previous fights, that this guy should have been the bigger favorite, or he should have been not the underdog, and how many times they've came through for us, from the Joseph Manez's to the Aldos, to the Michel Pereiras, to all the things that people doubted. I was able to confirm that they're either rumors or just misinterpretations that could happen from the perspective of somebody who never fought, or just doesn't have the view that I see from my point of view. But anyways, you know, a fighter and a hardcore fan, as well as a trainer and everything else I bring along with my perspective. But let's get started right off the bat, and I am excited that we have the opportunity, especially for someone like me who's, if you guys can tell, I just began this. This is kind of something I'm transitioning from my other full-time job I had, where I still have obligations to, so I'm transitioning to lesser and less time there, more and more time here, and I want to thank all the Patreon members especially who are making that possible, as well as the potential and the growth that I'm seeing from going from 0 to 500 in subscribers overnight almost. So thank you guys. It was a blessing to the people who are believing in me. Other channels are showing me that they love what I'm doing. So my competitors in an aspect, but more like my peers and co-workers, they've turned into instead of competitors. So things like that are showing me signs that my transition movement to doing this full time is worth it, and it's going to continue to be more and more better for everybody, for especially the followers and the members of the Patreon who benefit from my knowledge, my time I invest. So let's get started. Okay, well, I want to talk about one of the fights coming up, the next event for UFC, the Holloway versus Kattar event. So much great value. This card, you know, every card I told you there's a theme. One's like the older, we had recently where it was like the older generation versus the new upcoming generation, the kings and queens who are taking over, that are going to be the new ones holding it down. There was another one where it was the bums versus the other bums to see who's going to get their walking papers right before UFC happened to release half of their roster. So we see the themes for everything. This one just screams value. It's just guys who should be favorites are underdogs. Guys who should be bigger favorites are small favorites. I've seen that repeatedly. So this is, I think, a sense just to start the new year. The casinos or the odd makers, I don't know if this is their way of trying to test out to see what type of audience, what type of a betting before they start to evaluate who they should keep on their rosters. They want to see how sophisticated are these gamblers. When we open up somebody as a favorite, are they going to be fooled by it? So great time to be a part of the channel, because or when we give somebody slight favorite odds, are they gonna be able to take advantage of knowing that this guy should be the much bigger, and we messed it? Like, there's a lot of mistakes on this card from according to the odd makers where they got it, and I'll give them to you all the reasons why as well. All right, let's start with Dusko to Todorovic. Okay, Dusko is a guy who I'm very high on. I see this guy still undefeated. He's the kind of a guy who in his older organizations, everybody who fought him or didn't fight him, the powers to be, they all knew this guy's destined to be in the UFC one day. He was supposed to be in there much sooner, but in my opinion, but you know, I'm sure they for one reason, the negotiations, whatever it was, they had him there. He's still a young guy. Hey, name girl, can you pull up Dusko's information, please? Like his profile on ShareDog, and like his age, his stats on UFC's website as well. Thank you. Anyways, this is a guy, okay, so when I'm making my comparisons between him and his opponent, I was trying to finish saying, this is a guy who was viewed as like the Khabib of his organization. This is the guy who everybody did not want to fight. He was the Khamzats, or when Anderson Silva was in his prime. This is the guy you don't want to fight against. You knew if you were, even, let me remind you, Michel Pereiras, the guy who looked good against the guy who was hyped up, the bigger fit for all 4 rounds 2 or 3 rounds, all the entire rounds, at least like 80-90% of the fight, even during the fight, while I was noticing he is winning the fight, they still had him as an underdog. That's how much value they put into his opponent, and he still got the victory as we predicted, and which is the reason why he was my main play of the night, where I told everybody if there's a fight that you guys need to go all in on, or if you're losing money or you want to win more money, this is the fight I can vouch for, and I can tell you to put all your profits into to make more profits. And I didn't say that about any other fight of the night, and I only usually pick one fight a week or a combination of the week to give you guys. This was the reason why I knew what he was going to do. I actually expected him to do a better job, and here's why he didn't do even a better job than we predicted. The improvements that I've seen out of his opponent, Chaos Williams, speaks volumes of how serious. This is a guy who used to do other stuff outside of MMA, and now he's in the UFC, just like how I said Joseph Manez was, and a lot of fighters that are transitioning from other places that are now taking their career seriously are showing a better account of themselves. He made improvements, his footwork, his patience, a lot of stuff I didn't expect to see him, especially somebody under so much pressure to try to get a knockout and live up to the reputation he has recently built up that took him from having a following that was nowhere near what he's reached. He understands the value of having that type of a following. The guy didn't even want to accept defeat. After that, he posted, "I didn't lose. The judges messed it up." That's how important his fight was. For the first time ever, he made an excuse to losing and couldn't even handle it. Like, that's how important this fight was to him, and that's why I said. But he still showed me very good potential. He showed me that he came in way better than I expected than I ever seen him, and he still couldn't do the job. But that's not his fault. I said they gave him a big step up in competition because they can't just keep giving him nobodies. It wouldn't make sense after what the performances that he's been putting, even as an underdog in his most recent fight. Where now he wasn't a big underdog anymore, and he probably won't be. But they still got to slow him up. And this is the worst. I told you guys, the worst nightmare style. This is a guy who has never been finished except for one time in his career, and guess who that was? Dusko Todorovic. He's going to be the guy who we're talking about on this next upcoming fight. This is a guy who doesn't fight to the level of his opponent purposely. There's a lot of fighters that'll do that. They fight to the level of their opponent just to get, they're lazy. They don't want to do more than they need to. They don't want to risk. This is a guy who you kind of, if you wake up the dog inside of him, if you put him in through trouble and tribulations and in any areas, you're going to see a side of him you're going to wish you never brought out. He's got the potential. He's got the footwork. He's got the wrestling. He's got the one thing I loved about this guy when I see him fighting, his durability. You've got to hit him with a truck, and it won't even be enough. You got to hit him with a truck, reverse back over him 4 or 5 times to stop him from coming forward and being even more dangerous than before you hit him. Unlike his opponent, who's only got wins against guys who are quite the opposite. He's looked good. He's also undefeated, so they're both undefeated. He's a guy who, in his, I think, UFC debut, you'll notice sometimes you'll see, like the Joseph Manez is a perfect example. He's not the worst fighter. He's not the fighter with the least potential, but they made him the first fight of the night as a curtain jerker because their way of saying, here, we want you guys to start the show being entertained and excited. We don't want to give you a boring fight. So they use guys like that they really like or that they see as good fighters with potential. And that's why that guy was in his debut fight. He made his first opening fight. He was the first guy on the card. I think it was the Usman and Colby Covington card, if I'm not mistaken. I gotta check, but he showed a very good account of himself. But again, these are opponents nowhere near the levels that he is. A very similar sense to a Dusko. They're very similar in their abilities, but just when you come with experience, the more wins. This guy, remember, Dusko's only got like 1 win under his belt. That's not by finish, almost, and that's a guy who, just like Connolly, who's the only other guy that beat Pereira, he had 100% finish rate. Pereira, and that's another reason I try to tell you he's the worst nightmare for Chaos. Chaos is known for only winning with his power, This is one punch knockout power. This is not the guy who's easy to knock out with 1 punch. You got to be able to do what Dusko did. Even Dusko, who's the only guy that finished him, couldn't do it with 1 punch. Although he has those capabilities, he has done it before. He does got submissions. He's an all-around, well-rounded, great fighter. He's championship quality material. And his opponent, until he can show me that he's capable of doing it to the Pereiras, the guys who are at that level, this is at a pick'ems right now. I don't know if it's going to change later, but for so many reasons, I've seen that there should be more of a reason why they make Dusko. And now here's another reason, recency bias. Dusko had an opponent. Remember, this guy has been a long-awaited debut in UFC for so long that the pressure, the pressure and the expectations that came with his first fight, and UFC, they didn't give him a killer. They gave him a guy who's very durable that not many people finish. He usually loses by decisions. I think in his entire career, he had only been finished one time, if that. Daquan Townsend had never hardly been finished, and it was very hard. He finished him, even at his worst performance. I've never seen Dusko perform to those, but he still showed qualities of a champion. Like, you can pick up, it takes a champion to see one. I've seen qualities even on his worst performances that resemble champion level quality material, and he still got a finish on a guy who's hard to finish, the bigger guy, harder hitting guy, a guy who shows charisma, hard, doesn't ball up it like the opponents that his opponent is used to facing. Those guys, you'll notice, everybody he's ever beat for the most part, they gave up on the fight before he finished them. They either balled up or were just out of it. They took themselves out of the fight before he got the chance to do it. Even body punches, he's finished some fights, and he's not even the harder hitter. So a lot of reasons why he should not be lined at this small of a favorite. It's almost pick'ems. If somebody puts a big bet laid down on his opponent, he could go into being an underdog. That's how good the value is there. Now let's talk about another guy. Carlos Felipe, he's got a win over Yorgan De Castro as a huge underdog, which I kind of was worried about. I seen it coming. This was a fight on that card, was the only fight that I hedged, where I said, just in case, I made some combinations, my own personal bets. This is the benefits. We're making this happen more often. If you look at the posts that I made to my patrons, they'll tell you. I made adjustments from last week so that even like when I told you, like Durden, as you saw, was dominating the entire fight until, if it wasn't for his opponent pulling guard, getting desperate for the finish, because he saw that he was almost finished a few times and he would have gotten unanimously beat by the decision scorecards if he couldn't get the submission. So he went for a desperate attempt, which I said 3 out of 10 times could happen. Well, next time, if we, for example, make 10 combinations with Durden, we'll at least have 3 combinations with Flick on it. So we're making adjustments on my bet slips to make sure that every single fight, no matter what happens, we will always profit from every single fight. And with my accuracy, the seldom times that's ever hardly going to be necessary, because most of the times I'm 9 out of 10 times right. We don't have to do that. But for those occasions, like the Stephen Thompson, where I said if he doesn't get a knockout, Thompson will win by decision, the prop bet was plus money. So not only are we going to protect ourselves and assure ourselves we'll never lose on every single fight, we'll make profits, some less than more, but we'll do it in some cases where it'll even be more beneficial if the guy who we expected to lose wins. So it'll be extra improvements, but I've done this before, and here's an example. The Carlos Felipe Yorgan De Castro. Felipe is fighting on his card against the guy who was a former champion in his old divisions. This guy resembles a young version of a Mark Hunt, the knockout, one-punch, walk-away knockout artist Mark Hunt. He shows his same toughness, his same type of power, his same capability. But here's the one thing I like about this guy. Mark Hunt never even had it. Not only he knows what it takes to be a champion. This guy was the guy who was the main event in his old organizations. He was the main event always. He came from being the main event to now like in the lower toe. So they're not giving him the respect he deserves in this aspect by giving him a guy who was a huge underdog, one of the biggest underdogs in his last fight. Similar to how I said they gave, because of recency bias, Cheeto Vera way too much credit, and that although it was one of the best values of that card, and he came through for us, and even we found opportunities. If you were joining me and my companion that day, I found you guys even an opportunity where he was plus money. Aldo was an underdog at plus money during the fight, where I was telling you, don't worry, he's going to win, like I did for the Lewis Smoka fight and so many other fights. So it's important to always try to join me on those nights as well. But anyways, back to Carlos Felipe, very sloppy. He's got a heart, don't get me wrong. He's okay on the feet. Actually, to be quite honest, take it from a guy who's a professional boxer. Boxing is when I do MMA, I do all that stuff, but boxing is my forte. That's my specialty. I can box better than 90% of the boxers current. My footwork, my hand movement, my defense, my outfit, just beautiful. If you ever see me in boxing, and I'll try to give you guys some tapes sometime. But back to my point, Felipe's boxing is terrible, terrible. Like, did you even notice what he was doing in his last fight that he should have lost if it wasn't for the referees? In my sense, I think somebody had some influence in the referees in a night that, let me remind you, there was fights before that fight and after where the referee allowed the fighter, just go back and pay attention to this, okay? That same event that Yorgan de Castro lost against Felipe, he was dominating. It looked like he might have been hurt or something was wrong with Castro that fight. He was not fighting like we've ever seen him fight before. He was at his worst we've ever seen him coming from that to that fight. He just started the fight very gun shy, like almost like if he was injured or something had happened. Maybe the weight cut was bad. I don't know. But during the times where he was gaining control time. This is the stuff that wins fights and keeps you safe and avoiding from getting hurt. He was winning the fight. It took literally 2 seconds of him holding Felipe against the fence. I even heard other people complaining about this on their channels and stuff. So you can go back, it's verified. You can verify. He was holding, I remember screaming at the referee during the live fight that I was watching. He was holding him and just getting punchy. He wasn't just holding him against the cage, bullying him and getting punches while he was punching him against the cage. Mind you, this is not a championship fight. This is not a guy who was doing it for 6 minutes without punching or kicking. He just barely got started. It was like seconds into putting him against the cage and controlling him, which is a thing that Kamaru Usman has won fights, he did it to Jorge Masvidal. The entire fight that he used after Masvidal was getting success on the feet, he had to resort to toe stomps against the cage, right? Referee let it go, and that was a championship fight. For some reason, the referee cost Yorgan de Castro his fight. He should have won against Felipe. That was cheating, bad refereeing. Even the commentators were making mention of why did he separate them? Why was he making him to come up? He did it over and over and over and over. That fight was not even going to be close. Yorgan de Castro, the big favorite, should have won that. That was cheat. I don't understand it till this day. Nobody explained it. But for that, we're going to take advantage of it because now Carlos Felipe with a win over someone like that, they got him at a plus 200. A guy who was a plus 500 is now minus 200. He's so bad at boxing, even when he was getting the worst of Yorgan, who wasn't even in the fight, he couldn't even punch him. He started slapping him. He doesn't even know how to punch. It was so embarrassing watching him fight. If any real fighter was watching, they would have laughed at how bad his performance was. So he started to result to slapping. And there was no beef between them. They was very professional. They had no beef. The other guy wasn't, there was no excuse for him to start slapping somebody. He couldn't even punch. He was so bad at punching, he started making it look like he wanted to slap him instead, so it doesn't show how bad he is at punching. This guy's a terrible striker. I even heard other channels, I don't want to put any names out there, saying, did you see how amazing his boxing was? It's laughable. That's why I said you guys are in the right place. Be careful who you fight. Sometimes even if the sun will shine on a dog's behind sometimes, so everybody could be right, but sometimes when these guys are right about fighters, they're not even right for the right reasons. And like when you have robberies everybody knows about, they even try to take credit, say, yeah, did you see how the guy I picked won? And everybody knows that he lost. Like there's the same type of people that take advantage of those opportunities. So I'll be glad. The only ones that I was really surprised by that lost, because I said 3 out of 10. I said you can hedge the Thompson by decision. So nothing with Marias was a guy who I will gladly admit I was wrong about him. This guy's changed. He's either changed or I was wrong or he was mad. He's got wins. He's got wins over guys like some people can argue he really did beat Jose Aldo's in like some great fights. In his last fight, it was a lot of people can say it was a fluke because the referee stopped it early. We didn't get to see what him and Sandhagen would have looked like if it lasted for more than 30 seconds. So for a lot of unknown reasons, and it was more so of a fade on a guy who I haven't seen very active, who came from injury. So I read too much on the outside circumstances and didn't focus too much on the inside. So I was glad to admit that, that was one of my biggest mistakes of the year. I did not say I was surprised by that, but a lot of people. Marias was the favorite for a reason. Anyways, back on track. So Carlos Felipe against the guy who's a former champion in his division, a guy who's got the capabilities of knocking him out. But one of the key factors in this fight, a skill, a talent that he possesses that Felipe doesn't, is his judo abilities. He can take it to the ground and lay on him like a wet blanket. Nobody can take him off, and he can finish the fight on the ground. He can get the better of the exchanges on the feet. He's just his IQ, everything tells me that this guy should not be a plus 200 underdog if not for recency bias. He probably would have been a favorite. So great value there. I'll show you, if you're in my Patreon, based off the risk, the variations, all the possibilities, how we can use them the smartest, best way in our bet slip. So if you join, you'll get the advantages of that. You don't have to do any thinking. Leave the heavy lifting and research all to me. I'll take care of that for you guys. All right, back on track. Another fight I wanted to discuss. Let's see, where are we here? Sorry for the delay. My memory is the worst. I got to look into... All right, I'm gonna get into I'm doing a segment today with more of these picks for just the patrons only. I'm also gonna get into some of the betting tips that are very beneficial, like the one I just mentioned about how we can make sure that we're always gonna win no matter which result. If I know that there's a chance that there's a second path or alternative conclusion that could come about in a fight, if another guy has a chance, just not as big of a chance, I'll show them how to cash in on that. I also have a system that I use that'll make it possible for you to turn single bets, like $50 wagers, into the same type of a profit, turning it into like $500 with the same type of a method system that the parlays give you when you do a parlay, minus the risk of if any of the fights go wrong, where you'll lose all your money. I found a way to still get the same profits, just eliminate that downside to having parlays. So I'll be teaching that method to my patrons along with some other advice. So that'll be a private video for them only, coming in later today. Let's see now we'll touch more on the Tim Elliott, Jordan Espinosa fight. I do like Tim Elliott, don't get me wrong, but he's just not somebody who's proven to be consistent. Like, for example, when I lost my money on him for the fight that he was winning the entire fight, okay? He was doing great. It was a mismatch against him and Brandon Royval. He was dominating. I think it was Royval, if I'm not mistaken. Can you pull up, what was the first thing? Oh yeah, we were talking about Dusko, right? Can you just let me know when, because I forget. You have to tell me like, hey, I got the information you needed. So for Dusko, what did you find out? How old is he?
26.
26 years old only, so still improving. He's just in his prime. How many significant strikes does he do a minute? Like 8 or 9, right? One of the best numbers statistic-wise I can tell you. So even if it wasn't for his finishing abilities, he's finished guys who have never been finished, like the Pierias and other excellent opponents that he's finished by either submissions or strikes. He's got the one-nut punch knockout power. He's got the accumulation threats like the Jamal Hills we predicted could get the finish by accumulation, not 1 month against OSP, who we cashed in on how he won exactly. He's got that type of ability. He's got the submission threat as well, but he's only 26 years old, still going into his prime. How many significant strikes per minute does he got, absorbs and gives?
There was no information.
UFC's website?
Yes, no.
Okay, I'll research it. He's got about 8 or 9 significant strikes per minute and doesn't take even half of that. So that's one of the best statistics I've ever seen in a fighter. Excellent. So even by the decisions, he should not lose.
Oh, I did find he lands 8 strikes per minute.
She found it. 8 strikes per minute, as I said.
And absorbs 5.
Absorbs about half of that. Yeah. So excellent numbers, man. He'll pull away. He'll double his opponents in volume as well. So like literally all around, excellent package. As I said in the last video, before I even remembered he was on this card coming up, when we were talking about Michel Pereira beating Chaos Williams, this is a guy who's championship level qualities. Don't judge him just off his last performance, which he did win and get the finish. Wasn't even his best, and that's recency bias. The way they're all thinking like, oh, UFC caliber, he's not the same guy everybody thought. It was just the pressures, the butterflies, the expectations that you can tell anybody. A lot of people lose fights for that reason. And so the fact that he was still able to get the win, I have a feeling we're going to see an even better version of him this time, now that he's got that part out the way, you know? Okay, back on track. What were we talking about? Tim Elliott. Tell me about his most recent fights. I remember because in his Royval fight where he was winning until he lost, you could tell he just laid down and gave up his neck for no reason. He was too tight. He was gassed out. We found out later he did not take that training camp serious. He was partying a lot. He was doing stuff that he shouldn't have been doing. He was distracted outside MMA type of stuff, his other hobbies or career, whatever he does outside of the sport, was the reason why he couldn't get that win. But the next time we seen him, he was fully prepared. You could see it in the scales, at the weigh-ins, the face-offs, and in his performance. If he had that cardio, that confidence, knowing that he was prepared in that, he would have finished Royval, not just beat him like he almost did in the first round. So, but for those reasons, until I can see him at the scales, at the weigh, which is my specialty, when I see people at the weigh-ins and scales, I pick up on things nobody can pick up on if they didn't fight or train or just have that type of observation abilities. So we'll still wait and be patient before we go into that one when we get closer to the fight. But can you tell me what did he do on his most recent win? His last 2 wins.
He won by decision against Ryan. A name I can't pronounce.
It's okay. So he won. That means by decision. That means he was able to show that he did improve his cardio because he was able to go all 3 rounds and still get the win, which is what I wanted to see. And I hope that's what the version of, because Tim Elliott, a motivated, prepared, good cardio type of Tim Elliott is a world beater. This guy's championship level material type of a fighter too. He's got a lot of heart. He's a very, very good fighter. Very skilled, very unique skill sets. He's very, like, almost in a sense like a Dominic Cruz. What's his name? Yeah, the guy, Dominic, he's the commentator. Dominic Cruz. He's very similar to that type of a movement. He's very unpredictable. You're not going to find somebody who's going to be able to imitate him in training sparring sessions. So it's hard to prepare for a guy like Tim Elliott, especially with the heart that he's got. When he comes physically prepared to match it with all the other skill sets and attributes that he comes with that are good for fighting, he's a killer, man. He's a great fighter. I don't like putting money against him because he's the kind that can ruin your night or make your night. So inconsistency is dangerous. So we gotta be able to see where he's at. I'll look into his interviews as well, see what he's doing. I'll look into talk because I have good relationships with a lot of trainers and fighters. So we can try to get into the circle of his circle and people or his opponent's circles and find out some stuff like that. So stay tuned for that while I do my research. All right. Anyways, who was the guy? He was Royval. He lost against, right? Or he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, Royval. Okay. Calvin Kattar and Max Holloway. There's too much to talk about on that fight to give, but a lot of people are counting out Calvin Kattar because of Holloway's credentials, being a champion for so long. But the same thing that Conor McGregor did to Holloway, the same thing that Dustin Poirier did to Holloway, making Poirier made Holloway look like he doesn't even belong in the UFC. It was a mismatch almost. You could see his heart. All the Hawaiians have heart. You could see that in the Tyson Nams. They don't go away easy. So besides that, he did not look like he belonged on that level of championship where like Poirier was, right? But do you know why? It wasn't because Poirier is a much better fighter, because Holloway's a bad fighter. He does not do good against guys with power. Kattar's got God-given natural talents and power both. So stylistically and experience, like guys who he's fought against with these capabilities, he does not do very well against. So we're going to dissect this a little bit more further as far as style. Kattar's and a lot of other, he's very underrated. They don't give him, so that's why he's opening up as a plus 160 underdog. This guy's got also future championship level material. He's always, if he doesn't win this fight, he's still going to be in the top 3, top 5 for a long time. This guy's not going anywhere. He's got potential to be a future champion one day. And Holloway, we don't know where he is right now. He's lost a lot of his confidence. He's lost a lot of his people are not as dedicated to making him be better, like his training camps and stuff. I know they're not focusing as much on his growth and improvement as much as people are on Kattar's, who knows that he's got potential in the future to be even better. So a lot of other reasons. I pick up on things, remember, that's not just on paper, stuff that fighters only can see and take into consideration. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about. We'll get into that further on. There's a lot of time we have left. But just don't be fooled by that, the myths and the rumors that are going to go with, or just the expectations that people and the underrated value that they give them. Bethe Correia, Yuan. Oh man, these are two fighters that are fades. I don't trust either one of them. But the Brazilian, and you know, remember I told you words like statistics, and like they resemble other words like stereotype, but Brazilian and resilience, they sound alike, right? Well, the Brazilians are very resilient, and they don't give up easy. And UN is a very similar type, but for skill, like who's got the better movement, who's got the bigger heart, who's got the more power, who's got like Bethe Correia should probably win that fight, but we'll dissect that even further. Remember, I do segments after segment. I'm going to come with daily segments. Every day, you guys are going to get new segments touching on these a little bit more and more and more, so that by the time fight night comes, if I develop new information, I don't want to ever, remember another adjustment we made before this recent adjustment where we're going to start making sure that we profit on every fight by even making some combinations, lesser amounts obviously, for the second possible scenario outcome that can happen, like the 3 out of 10 times. Those were good. Besides that adjustment, the week prior we made another adjustment that's been very helpful, where we're just going to wait and before making 90%, we'll still, like, just for the sake of getting ahead of line movement, we'll still make about 10 to 20% of our bets before weigh-ins, but the majority of our bets, the 80-90% of our bets, will come after the scales and weigh-ins, and that'll give me more time to do research and a lot of other stuff that I need to do to make sure that we get everything perfect and we didn't miss anything. All right. Oh man, such awesome fights, and I'll even get into some other fights for the card after that. We got plenty of time to make sure that you guys get ahead of the line movement on all of these fights. Okay, oh yeah, we got Juliana Pena versus Sarah McMahon. Christina Aguilera and Warlley Alves. Warlley Alves is slightly bigger of a favorite than I would like to see him at, especially this early on. I can only imagine what it could possibly be like later on. So the value is not the greatest on this fight, in a card that's got full of value. It's not my favorite, but Warlley Alves is just the perfect style matchup to beat someone like, I don't know if they don't like Christina Aguilera, but they keep giving him fights. Can you pull up Christian Aguilera's share dog and give me like his most recent opponents? I found they gave him Sean Brady. Yeah. Sean Brady is similar sense. I think he's a little bit higher level in my on the feet and the ground, but Warlley Alves possesses the same abilities. He could do exactly what Brady did to Christina Aguilera. Christina Aguilera, besides the one-punch knockout power he can possess, he does got good footwork, he does got good boxing, he does got good heart, but it won't be enough against a guy who's this well-rounded. He needs to fight a guy. This guy will need to fight. UFC is giving him bad matchups after bad matchups. I guess, I don't know, for whatever reasons, but this is a fight that Warlley Alves has in the bag. It's just a good style matchup for what he's capable of doing and being able to stay away from the threats that Aguilera possesses. So, but when somebody's got the capabilities of being able to put somebody's lights out, just for the same reason why even when Chaos Williams was losing the fight on my best value of the night, Michel Pereira, he was still a favorite. Even when in the later rounds, when it was impossible to win by anything but but knockout, Pereira was showing to be the better mover. Like I said, the better movement, the better footwork, the better of everything, and getting the better of the submission attempts, takedowns, and just showing that his overall game was just on a different level. He was still an underdog, believe it or not. So for that same reason, where they had that correct, because a guy who can take your lights out in one punch should not be at too big of an underdog price at any time, as long as there's still seconds left. Look what Yair Rodriguez did to Korean Zombie on a fight. He was getting dominated all 3 rounds. Within 1 second left of the fight, or Rosenstruck to Alistar Overeem. Few seconds left, 2 seconds. They have the ability to fish, so they know they'll never make him a big underdog. But the same reason, they shouldn't be this guy's they shouldn't be that big of an underdog. He's got that ability. Look at his record, look at his fights, look at his power. And he doesn't just come with power, he comes with good footwork, good boxing, good defense. He's got potential. Like, if you're just the type of guy who likes to chase after value, he's got value, but he's not going to be the guy who's going to win 9 out of 10 times. 8 out of 10 times this guy, no, 9 out of 10 times this guy will, 8 or 9 out of 10 times this guy will lose. And that's not what the combination. Patrons, don't worry, sit back, you don't have to worry about how I incorporate. We'll make sure that one bet slip that'll protect us from at least getting all our money back if in case that happens. So don't worry. And if it doesn't happen, it'll be such as because he's going to be at such good numbers for that knockout prop. It'll be like plus 400, 500 that it'll get more than our money back. We'll still profit one way or another. No matter who wins, I'm going to find you guys a way to profit. But so one guy winning will obviously always profit us more. So we will always still have a guy who we can root for and keeps the fun in watching fights still there. Don't worry. All right, guys, stay tuned. We got a lot of details. I want to get into the hows, what types of advantages more specifically that you guys can look into, what you can look for happening, wins, so you can get the prop bets, the methods, the rounds, all that stuff, because that's my specialty. I don't think anybody could tell you who and how they're going to win better than I can. I can really dissect into the depth details of how somebody should win and how quickly it'll take them to get that type of a win. So we'll get into those. If you're a Patreon, you'll see it perfectly in my bet slips. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to give YouTube my full breakdowns. I'll give you guys not even probably half of the, because there's so many fights, 14 fights. You guys might get 6 or 7 fights at best on a good week. So stay tuned. Join it. The membership is within 1 week. You'll make your profits back for the whole year, guys. If you're doing it smart, you're following my live. You get live notifications sent to your email and to your app. And you'll never miss it. You'll take advantage of live betting opportunities. Just midweek MMA news. If you're bored, you're on your break, you want to go to my folder that's MMA news and just see the developing stuff as soon as they start. It's for entertainment and financial reasons. It's worth it. I promise you that, guys. Thank you for your time. I hope to see you guys in the Patreon. I hope to see you on my next video. Please don't forget to like, to subscribe, the reminder, so I can keep giving you guys some knowledge and expertise on what you guys and I love so much, which is MMA and UFC, guys, and all the other organizations from Bellator and everything else that we do here. Thank you, guys. See you on the next video in the next day or so.